Hi, it's Quilting Nerd from my quilting studio, or the whole 3 square meters of it. This is my machine, this is my quilting corner, and this is my big helper, a little clamp attached to a flexible arm, and its job is to hold the large quilt so it's not falling off from my small quilting table. On the other side I have the wall, and the rest I keep on my lap. And in this way I am able to quilt even a king size quilt because my machine is large enough for that. But I, with slightly smaller type, I could quilt large queen sizes as well. When I sit down to quilt a large quilt, I have to adjust my fabric. I have to adjust the sandwich under the needle, and the next 10 minutes it's uncut, so you can see every single step which I repeat on a regular basis. So it's adjusting the quilt sandwich, smoothing a lot the area under the needle that will be quilted right now. Everything to make sure that the fabric is nicely under tension a little bit, and that I can move it in a smooth way, that nothing is hanging on the quilting table. So I don't have to apply more force. Everything has to be nice and smooth. When you start quilting a larger quilt on a domestic machine, the first several minutes consist on adjusting the fabric. That's it. You have to make sure that everything is distributed there where you want, that the fabric is not piling up under your needle, and that you can move it smooth, that nothing will fall down. That's why the clamp under the side. And you will see that those breaks for smoothing the fabric are smaller and smaller. It is easier if you have smaller blocks that limit your quilting area. This quilt is very, very special because it's a large quilt consisting of large negative spaces. I have to fill them with large features, otherwise I will be never able to quilt it in a reasonable time. Right now I'm quilting nice paisley feather with lots of echoing. It's great design for negative spaces because it covers a lot of area at once, and you will see here now that I will hardly make here any breaks to adjust the quilt. Just from time to time I will smooth it out to make sure I don't have any wrinkles. Again, you will hardly see here any pins. I always use safety pins for basting of my quilt sandwich. Again, because I want to quilt large spaces, and if I will make a swing and I have to stop or hit a safety needle, it will kind of stop the process and throw me off. Again, I adjusted the quilt sandwich, I smoothed it out, and this is a step that you have to repeat on a regular basis. In contrast to a long arm machine, we do not have this nice tension on the sandwich elements. We have to do that on our own. We have to apply this tension with our hands so we can move it nice and smooth under the needle. On the other hand, every quilt you quilt on a domestic machine, it's custom quilted. It's unique. You cannot apply a computer controlled pattern, so every single quilt of yours will be completely individual and unique. This is a large quilt right now what I have there. It's 90 inches square quilt, queen size quilt. As I said, mostly negative space, so I can quilt whatever I want. I had to divide it and fill it with different patterns depending on the fabric. You can hardly see any pattern because it's a quilt for my friend, and we decided to quilt it with matching thread, so you can see some texture emerging but not really details. but in this video I really wanted to focus more on the mechanics of moving the quilt under the needle than on the actual pattern that will come in the next video. And echo around, and the paisley echoed feather is almost done. You can see some flowers, swirls to fill the spaces, everything actually relatively large, so I could quilt this quilt in a relatively fast manner. When we are talking about time of quilting of such a large quilt, it took me 4 weeks. I know that sounds very long, but please take into account I am a full-time working mom, so I have job, I have kids, I have a household like many of you, and I can quilt in the evening, half an hour here, 1 hour there. That's it. I don't have more time for it. And from time to time I make breaks to make one or the other quilting video, which are also recorded in this tiny little quilting space. You don't need a lot of space to have this hobby, but it's nice if you have dedicated space for it, even if it's tiny, because it saves a lot of time if you don't have to bring your machine up, if you don't have to set everything up every single time when you want to quilt. When I am done, then I just stop and leave the quilt there till I am finished with my other tasks, and then I can quilt for another 15 minutes or half an hour. So when you calculate everything, I spent maybe 20 hours, 24 hours quilting this very large quilt. When you think about it like that, it was actually a fast process for custom quilted queen size quilt. I love doing that. Every time I'm done with a quilt, it's an amazing feeling. And then the quilt goes on the pile and it waits till I'm finding larger amount of time for binding. And then I can move on to the next project. And it's again very exciting. So let's go back to the important things about quilting on the domestic machine. As you can see, there is a lot of work done by your arms and your hands. So I actually don't mind when I have to make breaks to smooth out the fabric, because in this little tiny break I can relax my shoulders, I can adjust my shoulders so they are not under tension, so I do not have any problems with my back. It's very important. You cannot be tense when you do this work. Otherwise you will end up with backache and shoulder ache and tension in your neck, so that wouldn't be fun or relaxing. So when I have to stop and adjust, I roll my shoulders usually. I catch a bit longer break. I take a look at what I quilted, what I want to do, where I want to go next. It's all kind of fits in. There is no need to rush when you quilt. You can just relax, enjoy the haptic experience of touching the fabric or touching the quilting space, looking at it, planning your next steps, especially when you have such organic improv quilting like I'm doing right now here. I never know what will be the next pattern. I only know I want to have vegetation kind of look, so lots of flowers, lots of leaves, lots of feathers. I know not much of it, but it doesn't matter. At the end, what you want to have is this nice, wonderful texture, and in the right light, the pattern will become visible, so it can kind of surprise you when you are in the room where the quilt is. That's about the most important things. Of course, there is some factors that can make your work a little bit easier. Large sewing table, so add-on table, helps a lot. If you can lower your quilting machine, integrate it with your sewing table, that's a huge bonus. This machine is too large for that, and for now I have to wait with the next investment to buy a dedicated sewing table for it. It is my hobby, not my job, and so that's important. If you have a chair with adjustable height, so you can adjust it in a way that your legs and your shoulders are in a healthy position when you do that, it's another thing. Good light is important. But what counts most is that you have your own space. This machine, what I'm using, it's really large, but that's not the first machine I started with. That's actually my 6th one. I started with small pfaff machine, then I moved on to larger and larger models. My last 2 machines were Yaname machines. They are comparable to all the others like Broder or Bernina's in the size, and already those large machines are big enough, but you can also quilt on a smaller quilting machine. Maybe not large quilts, but they are good enough. Actually, they are very good for quilting if you want to check and test if this hobby is for you. Happy quilting!